Um, so how was like having your projects shown in Nuit Blanche in like visual arts like Mississauga? How did that come about, and what was like that feeling like?
Yeah, so Visual Arts Mississauga, I've worked with them a couple times now in regards to just doing my poetry for them, and they've been so gracious to obviously pay me for my craft. So it's honestly been the most eye-opening experience, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like just being told you're good enough at what you love doing to get paid for it is the most like rewarding feeling. And it was a very, very big connection I made because obviously, the city of Mississauga and all these local communities have the structure and foundation to help you, to help level you up and escalate your craft. So working with them was a very eye-opening thing. I actually got in contact with them with a contact, Hiba. She owns Open Gallery. She's been so gracious at connecting local artists with different people. So the first time around, that's how it happened. The second time around, at their second exhibition, they reached out and said, "Hey, we loved your poetry. We want to perform again." I said, "Yeah." In terms of Nuit Blanche, so I've actually worked with Nuit Blanche a couple times. Way back, it was just as a volunteer, kind of getting my foot in the door. This was before the pandemic, and then afterwards, the pandemic. This year was the first one that opened. Because I'm also working at Moonlight right now. Sava, the owner, was so great in helping me, getting me involved, putting me on the project, getting to do the entire setup with him, and it was such a rewarding experience just because throughout the day I saw a lot of my homies pull up and be like, "Yo, this is sick," and I'm like, "Yo, I had a
Yeah.
part in that," and it's just a rewarding experience seeing that the city of Mississauga and Toronto really help local creatives get their work seen.
Yeah, most definitely. Because like you'll also have like people who've never like seen your work before, like all over like the city and all that. And like some people would have like different reactions and all that. I know like even with Nuit Blanche, back then it was just like as a hub for like teenagers, just getting high like or drunk like on the weekend and all that. So
And it
like
still is, don't get it wrong.
yeah,
It still is, but
yeah,
it's interesting because like, yo, I was one of those teenagers, right? Like right
yeah,
after high school, uni, we were doing the same things. Like, yo, everyone's out till 6, smoking, drink till your brains
yeah,
out. But over time, you kind of start seeing the opportunity
yeah,
involved, right? You start saying, wait, if there's this many streets closed, how much government funding is involved? Wait, so
yeah,
how much are they paying these people? And like these
yeah,
things, like they add up in your head, and it's like, yo, if I really want to make an
uh,
opportunity out of this, I gotta capitalize.
yeah,
So when you start looking into these things from a business standpoint and not just like I guess a recreational standpoint, it makes a big difference.
yeah. Um, and also too, I know like when you're working with like city council and all that, like for both cities, there's always gonna be like an issue in terms of finding like the right amount of funding for art and all that. So I don't know if you've always like had those like issues before, like where you've had like a council member or like a lobbyist or like a juror, like maybe not seeing like the vision like appropriately in that sense too, and like you'd probably had to like share it, like show it in like a different way or show it.
100%, man. There's always pushbacks, especially if you're dealing with government and bigger corporate brands, like Fortune 500. There's always a pushback because obviously at the end of the day they have a level of integrity and a brand to protect, right? They
Yeah,
can't just like let anyone walk in and jeopardize what they've spent so much time working so hard to build. So there's always a screening process, a criminal record check, all these little things that there's that delay the process,
yeah,
right? And by the end of it, I'm not even liberal. Usually after applying to one of these arduous processes, filling out the application, waiting, doing the screening, one, two, three, the interviews, you're usually so drained by the end of it, you don't even care. I'm
yeah,
not even lying. So it's a very long and
yeah,
meticulous process. But if you can ride it out, if you can get through it and see the value of pushing through it, the rewards, if it all works out, are endless. But you have to be again able to pivot, adapt, and really not, I don't want to say compromise your creative vision, but unfortunately, you're gonna have to compromise something, right? Whether it be the delivery, the funding, the budget,
yeah,
the presentation, something has to be compromised to make it work because they have cookie cutter puzzle pieces they want you to fit
yeah,
into. And if you lack adaptability, you're not gonna be able to
yeah,
compromise and
yeah,
monetize off
yeah.
that.
Yeah, because I know recently, like like there's like the city elections that happened like all over like the GTA and like all over like other parts of like Ontario. So like, how did that like affect the idea of like visual arts and like creativity to the city? Like, did you feel like even like with your city or even in Toronto, like they still made the right choice, or have you felt like it changed the whole aspect of the arts industry like forever?
Honestly, man, the privatized art industry when it comes to like just museums and Toronto and everything, it's messy. And the reason I say this, bro, is a perfect example of this is like I don't know how long ago this was, but there was a team that Ford put out that went around taking down all the graffiti that artists and stuff put up throughout the city, tagging stuff. And tell me how that the team that they hired covered up a $400,000 mural that the city of Toronto paid to do, right? So it's just like it's so counterproductive because what do you define as art? now, right? So is it like if the city of Toronto funds an artist to, almost half a M to put up a whole mural of graffiti across a whole block,
Yeah,
and then the team that's taking down the tagging takes it down, what do you quantify and qualify as art, right? Is
yeah,
it a nice, beautiful oil painting? Is it a digital NFT? And it really just comes down to the
yeah,
community, right? So I feel like the city of Toronto and Mississauga, they're doing a lot for artists, don't get me wrong, but there's so many more privatized governments, communities, and organizations doing more, right? You
yeah,
have things like Visual Arts Mississauga, you have places like House, you have other incubation centers that are doing so much because they understand the creative on a personable level. You go to the
yeah,
city of Mississauga, or the city of Toronto City Hall Council, you're just a number. You're a case number. You're a person. You're not a person. You're a case number. You're a number in the system, and that's how they deal with you, right? They look
yeah,
at numbers, budget, and see if it's going to work. They don't take in our story, your socioeconomic status, your upbringing, or culture, and that's the difference, right? And that's what makes you you.
yeah.
So it
No,
makes a big difference.
yeah, no, exactly. Because I know, like, even when you're impressing like some of these people too, like maybe they might not be like aware of how like that this new form of art is like different from what they've had like many years ago and all that. And it's just like even having like that specific team too, because sometimes like the vision might be like quite different as well too. Like as you said, it's just like a statistic like in the game and all that. But when you have like these actual jurors that are more like open and are keen to like what's going on right now, you'll understand like why the situation is. Like they've even did the same thing with education, like with Ford changing it to something from like 1998 or something like that with like sex ed. So even though we're in a whole different universe with new gender changes and sexual changes and
Mhm.
consent and all that, so it's a whole different aspect.
It is. And I just feel like, man, just because, like, yo, I actually studied policy, political science on like
Yeah,
a pretty decent level, like to actually understand what's going on. It's all privatized business at the
yeah,
end of the day, and
yeah,
our
exactly.
tax dollars fund it.